Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, if you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.24 for our 2024 fundraising campaign. Visit the Film Florida merchandise page at filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. All merchandise proceeds go to the Film Florida Filmmaker Grant and Scholarship Fund. Susan Gallagher is an award-winning actress, producer, and writer. She's appeared in numerous films and television series, even if you might not recognize her in one of her more popular roles. In 2014, she formed Her Little Red Productions and has written and or produced several award-winning short films. We talked to Susan about the evolution of her career, her memorable roles and stories, advice for actors, and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Susan Gallagher. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Susan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. What's your backstory? Where'd you come from?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm born and raised in Charlotte, Gastonia, North Carolina, and my mother was in the entertainment industry. She was a jazz musician and singer for many years, a very talented lady. But we lived in Gastonia, so there wasn't a whole lot of business. But I think I got the bug at a very early age from her, and there were always entertainers visiting, and my parents were married at the Waldorf in New York City, and we went to New York as a family regularly. And I think I just got the bug from her, and I did a little modeling when I was in my teens, but it wasn't until my 20s when I actually married Jimbo Yana from Lake Wales, Florida, this little town in the center of Florida, and started taking acting classes because there were a lot of commercials in the Orlando, Tampa area because we have the big theme parks, and there was work, and people were doing student films and indie films, and there were a few series going on, and up at Orlando, of course, we've got Universal Studios, and it just was a natural kind of fit for me. And because I came from a little larger area in the Charlotte market and moved to such a small town in Lake Wales, it gave me an opportunity to be in the city and to take classes in Orlando and Tampa. And I did that for a long time and had my two children, Caroline and Beau, and kept my foot in the business just so that I would have a creative outlet, have something that was outside of Polk County. And I could also kind of plan my own schedule if I didn't have time for an audition or wasn't interested in a job. It wasn't like an 8 to 5 kind of job, but it gave me a little extra money, and I did a lot of print work and a lot of commercials, and the doors just kind of opened from there.
Did you have to make a choice at any point about whether this was going to be your career or something else? What was, I like to look at the path not taken. Was there another thought about a career path for you?
Well, I studied business in college, and my family has their own business in Gastonia, and I worked there for many years, but I had always wanted to be in the business. I just never was in an area that really offered much at that time. But when I moved to Florida, that was changing because there was a lot of business back then. Actually, Florida, you probably know this, used to be third in the country in production behind LA and New York, and then, of course, Florida. So there were a lot of opportunities, but I chose my family and raising my children over a career because I just did it part-time. I just, like I said earlier, wanted to keep my toe in the water and continue to learn and continue to take classes, which is what I did for many, many years. And then back in the 90s, I booked a recurring role on Safe Harbor, which was on the WB. It was an Aaron Spelling show, and he handpicked me to play Gregory Harrison's love interest, Claire, who owned the local diner, and that shot up in Jacksonville. But, I was away from home because it shot in Jacksonville. It wasn't shooting in Orlando or Tampa, which I live in the center of the state in Lake Wales between Orlando and Tampa. But that was a great opportunity. And we were on the air for one season, and then, we weren't picked up because we were in a 9 o'clock slot and it was actually an 8 p.m. show. But I made some great contacts during that experience. And the kids and I would start going to LA every pilot season, usually we would go out from February sometimes until May.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great experience. We lived at the Oakwood Apartments. My kids went to the Studio Academy. They made a lot of great friends, and they were in the business too. And my husband would, God bless him, he would commute every couple of weeks from Florida to LA. But I studied out there and I started getting some more legit work. I had joined the union, of course, by that time, and just continued to try to learn and grow and study with some really great teachers.
Now, you've had a few opportunities to work on projects that people would really recognize: Cobra Kai, NCIS New Orleans, Doggone. Is there a favorite story from any of those kind of more well-known that you could share?
Well, I am most known for Homeless Land and Cobra Kai.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Big Three. And, that was so out of the norm for something that I had done in the past. But I saw it on Actors Access, which is a self-submission site online, part of the breakdown services, actually, but you can submit yourself. And I wanted to be more of a character actor, but my agents just didn't see me as that because I had done mostly mom stuff and the nice lady stuff and the pretty stuff and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I knew that I wanted to be more of a character actor and saw this online. And I said, you know what, I'm going to submit for this. And I did have a headshot that was really rough looking, just me in a beat up t-shirt, no makeup, kind of dark circles under my eyes, kind of went for the third shift woman working at the Waffle House who's down on her luck, or the drug addict, whatever. So I got an audition and I put myself on tape at a great studio in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I am right now. And we just had a blast because it was such a long shot. But I did my hair kind of back brush with dreadlocks, and I did do dark underneath my eyes and whited out my lips and really went for kind of a drug addict look. And then I got a call back and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to meet these people in person. And my husband and kids are like, well, you got to go in full character. So I wore my husband's big old beat up sweats and then an even bigger, larger sweatshirt. And I did my hair and my makeup and I went in full character. And I just had a blast at the callback. And when I was walking out the door, Hayden Schlossberg looked at me and he said, well, we got to do something about those teeth because Lynn has rotten teeth.
Yeah.
I said, bring it. And, I was finally at the age where I was secure enough within my own skin that I didn't care what I looked like. A lot of my friends are like, how can you look so bad, on camera? And I just didn't care. I wanted to play the role so badly. And it's just been a wonderful ride. And the fans have been great. And the funny one-liners that the big three, John, Josh, and Hayden, have written for Lynn, they've taken on a life of their own. And it's been a blast.
Now, when you were cast in the role, did you have any idea what it would, did you have any thought of what it could eventually turn into? Or did you just think, oh, this was going to be a role for an episode or two and that's about it?
I thought I didn't know that it would be as big as it is, but I did my research, which I always do when I am going to submit myself or something, self-submit. And I saw who was attached. I saw that Ralph Macchio and William Zabka and Marty Cove were all three on board. And then the big three, John Hurwitz, Josh Heald, and Hayden Schlossberg, we've got the Hot Tub Time Machine. We've got, Harold and Kumar. These guys are legit. I thought this could be huge. And it's the Karate Kid.
Right.
It's a continuation of the Karate Kid. So I knew that I had to just go for it. I just did not expect to get it. But I wanted it. I had never wanted a role so badly in my career.
And Homeless Lynn has taken on an entirely a whole life of its own outside of even the episodes that you appear in. I mean, there's social media followings, there's all
Yeah.
these different things about it. I mean,
And her name is really not Homeless Lynn. Her name is Lynn.
right, right. But that's how
But I
everybody
mean,
refers to her.
yeah. I mean, even the big three call me Homeless Lynn. So it's
Uh-huh.
hilarious.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
funny.
and I mean, how in tune are you to this life outside of the episodes that the homeless Lynn has taken on?
Well, the thing with Lynn is that the fact that I look so different, I mean, my teeth are straight up rotten. They paint them brown. They go in between my teeth with dark brown. They white out my lips, my eyebrows. They do dark circles. And then, of course, my hair. And then they put dirt makeup all over me. I mean, all over my face, my hands, my fingernails are disgusting.
Hmm.
My feet, because they like to show my feet and some of them. So she is just straight up filthy, but it is hilarious and it's very liberating to play that. It's just, she's a hot mess.
Yeah.
So most people do not recognize me as Homeless Lynn. And when they find out that that's the character that I play, they're just flabbergasted.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, the first time I saw it, I actually kind of recognized you, but I was like, well, I'm not really sure. And then I think they came back for another scene, and I was like,
Yeah.
I got to look this up. And I went to IMDb, and I was like, holy cow, that is actually Susan. I can't believe it. It was hilarious. And then when I'm
Well,
sitting there telling my family, and they're just kind of looking at me like, what?
that is so funny. And I appreciate you sharing that story because I love to hear stories like that. Some people who do know me will catch it in my voice. They're like, "Oh my God, that sounds
Hmm.
like Susan Gallagher," or like with you, who know me a little bit but not
Hmm.
that well. Go, gosh, she seems familiar.
Hmm.
Same
Hmm.
thing in Loki, the Marvel
Yep.
episode 3 that I got that job. I think because the casting directors and the directors have seen that I am willing to go there. And because of Homeless Lynn, I am willing to take chances and I can play a badass woman. So that helped me and it gave me confidence to go in there in that audition for Marvel because she's quite a warrior and has this futuristic gun and blasts Loki not only once, but twice in that scene. And it was just fantastic.
We'll talk
But I
about
think
that.
it came from me having the confidence and the freedom to go there with those kind of women that are not the typical role that you would see somebody like me in.
Well, now talk about that. Talk about that thought process of you've kind of, whether on purpose or not, where, your agents thought of you as a certain role, but you wanted to break out of that a little bit more to do something else. And like you said, it's been so liberating. Talk about that mindset and the advice that you give to other actors to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do or people wouldn't think of you to do.
It took a long time, and I had to be very deliberate about some goals because that was my goal, was to break out of that commercial looking pretty lady because I had gotten that before. Susan, they're looking for a more nondescript person. They loved you, blah, blah, blah. And, they're not going to put you in the scene with the lead, or, you may pull focus, or you may be distracting, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting older. And the older I got, this is the truth. The older I got, the more I was able to tone down any beauty or whatever that I might have because I'm getting older, even though, I'm fighting the aging process. I'm not going to lie about that because I still like to look good when I need to and when I
Sure,
want to,
sure.
but I want to be able to look horrible. I want to be able to look, old. And the thing is, with the fabulous hair and makeup and wardrobe people that we have in this business, I mean, they can do wonders. Just like they can make you look fabulous, they can make you look hideous too.
Uh-huh.
So I had to prove that to the community. And the first opportunity that I had was, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a hustler. I go after my own work. I do not sit back and wait for my agent to give me a career because it's not going to happen, especially with us living and trying to work in a regional market, a secondary market. you're so limited. And a lot of my friends are fine with that. A lot of people make a great living at the theme parks, and my hat's off to those people because they're brilliant. But I wanted to do more. So I would scan regularly Actors Access and Backstage.com for low budget indie films, for short films that where I could get some footage of something besides, this one type of role. And there was one on Backstage.com called Picking Back Up, and it was for a drug addict woman whose husband was a drug addict and he died, and she's being evicted from her house, and she's just a wild woman. And I booked that. Wesley Eldridge was the writer and director, and he gave me a shot. He paid me. He flew me to Richmond, Virginia. So it's not like I was doing a favor for a friend in a short. This was a legit project that I booked on my own, and that was a great experience, and it gave me an opportunity and to have some footage. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to have footage to show to my agent when they say, Susan, I would never, ever submit you for a homeless woman. Forget it. You go, okay, look at this. And then they see this footage. So that's what I would advise people. And a lot of people say, find your genre, find your niche. And a lot of people make a great living doing that. But that's just not the road I wanted to go down. So if you're trying to bust out of that little box that they put you in, then you have to do things, and you have to be willing to think outside of the box, and you have to be willing to do low budget indies and to do student films. I did student films for years in New York at Tisch, because as the kids got older, I would go to New York and study. And then, of course, we were in LA every year. So yeah, I was starting to get footage, and you really have to work hard to do it, because it took me a long time, but I don't give up,
Now, I want to stick with the Cobra Kai theme here, because you were also in a made-for-TV movie filmed in St. Petersburg and Clearwater called Taste of Love, which had strong ties to Cobra Kai. Tell us about Taste of Love.
Taste of Love is sort of like a Hallmark type feel-good family film. And it stars Erin Cahill, who's very well known on the Hallmark Channel, and just a doll. And I played her mother, and Martin Cove played her father. So we were married in this movie, which the fans just were going crazy. To have Homeless Lynn and John Kriegs married, and this nice, loving couple, happily married. And his son, Jesse Cove, plays Erin's love interest. And, he was also in Cobra Kai and was the bully, and so it was just a lot of fun. And I had never really had the opportunity to work closely with Martin, because I'm usually with Johnny, Johnny Lawrence. So that was a wonderful experience. And it was so nice to work in my home state. And we shot over in Dunedin and Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area. Everybody just welcomed us with open arms, and it was a great experience. I loved every minute of it.
Now, you also have a production company called Her Little Red Productions, which is a female-run production company focusing on female-driven projects where you produce indie films about the human condition and purpose. How has this company come to life?
It was back in 2014. A good friend of mine, you may know Mary Rachel Quinn, an actress that I've been friends with over 30 years. And some of our other friends were starting to do their own stuff. And we're like, well, she didn't graduate from Southern Cal or Tisch. And, she's out there, got the guts to do it. And we finally just had the courage to fail. And Mary Rachel encouraged me and kind of pushed me. And so I started Her Little Red Productions. So she was working with me from the very beginning. And we've done several short films, award-winning short films. And my goal has always been to grow and to learn and to get better. And, I've had a couple of documentaries, won an Emmy, but really, honestly, it was nothing that I did. I teamed up with a very smart and talented woman named Dr. Lisa Mills at the University of Central Florida in Orlando.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. And I was smart about who to give a little bit of money to. So that was basically all Lisa, but I'm just grateful that she takes me along on these rides. And then Marching Forward was our last documentary that we did together, the most recent documentary, and it got an Emmy nomination. So like, okay, Lisa, what are we doing next? But right now we have I don't think Mary Rachel worked on this one with me, but I have a short film called The Service that's on the festival circuit right now, and it's doing really well. And Julie O'Hara was my director. So I had a female director. Jennifer Dunn's my writer, female writer, and Catherine Dyer, the great Catherine Dyer from Atlanta, who everybody would know if you look her up on IMDb. It's Catherine with a C. She was my other lead. I was in it, and she was in it. And then Tim Ware from Remember the Titans. So we shot up in Atlanta for that. Because, with the whole COVID thing, you've got to have some kind of creative outlet. And coming out of that, it was still very, very slow. And I needed to do something. I needed to have that creative outlet. And that's what happens with me. And that's how Her Little Red continues to put a few things out there a year, is because I'm not sitting around waiting on that phone to ring. I want to create my own stuff if I'm not being hired by somebody else. I mean, acting is my passion. It's my first love, but producing and collaborating with other people is wonderful too. And we do work with guys. We love our guys. We'll have a token guy here and there. So.
Well, you mentioned producing and writing. Was that a natural evolution to get a little bit more into that? Or did you stumble in that, like you said, because of the pandemic and just looking for things to do? I mean, or did you always want to do more than just act?
I always thought that if I had more experience behind the camera, that it would make me a better actor. And I think it has, because it takes the whole mystique out of the casting process when you're looking for the right person to play a specific role, whether I've written it or not. And I don't feel like I'm a writer. I am really good at collaborating with really talented and smart writers. But I do like producing. But I think that it's more of feeling like you have a little bit of control over your career and your future, because being in a regional market, once again, I mean, if I were in LA all of these years since my kids were young and we used to go out, I probably could have, booked a series regular role, because I do work so hard and I am so driven. But, my husband's business is in Lake Wells, Florida. So you're limited, and you have to accept that, and you have to think out of the box and work with what you have. So producing was kind of a natural progression, especially as I got older and there were fewer roles. So yeah, I just want to work. I love to work. And when you're producing or writing your own stuff, you can write whatever role you want, whatever role you need that you're lacking on your demo reel to market yourself and to have the experience. Like I did Queering, which was on YouTube. It still is. We did 2 seasons and shot it in New York. And I played a bisexual retired dentist, this woman who was finally coming out as a bisexual. And I did that because I knew that it would make me a better actor, because I'm not bisexual.
Right.
But I love that role, and I love the writing, and I love the creators and the whole casting ensemble. We actually premiered at South by Southwest, and we were up for best ensemble, best new ensemble. And I got that through backstage.com.
Wow. Well, it's a really good point about when you're producing and writing, you can produce and write the characters that you want to help your career further. Now, you talked a little bit about your Emmy Award-winning documentary called The Committee. What drew you to the subject and, being an executive producer and that whole experience? Talk a little bit more about that.
I think because of the subject matter, it's basically about a witch hunt. This committee of men from Tallahassee, Florida, politicians formed to go on this witch hunt to weed out any gay or lesbian faculty in the University of Florida university system and student body also. And it was based on the truth, and it needed to be told. It needed to come to shed the light on it. And I felt very passionate about that. And I'm all about supporting women in particular. And I love Dr. Lisa Mills and respect her, and probably would produce anything with her that she wanted and needed me to help. And that project had stalled because they ran out of funds. And we were trying to get it up on PBS and to have some legs. And I was able to come in and help make those things happen. It's the brainchild of Lisa and her fellow producers that originally did all of the research and the lead work on, that very important piece.
Yeah. Now you have experience acting in a whole lot of different productions. You talked about it, miniseries, films, TV, shorts. Is there a difference in the way you approach acting based on what the end format is, or is storytelling?
For me, it starts, and I think for most actors, it all starts with the writing. And sometimes you have wonderful writing but not always. So not every job, not every gig is this memorable, delicious experience that you never want to end. So it starts with the writing. And if the writing is good and there's a character and an opportunity to sink my teeth into something, then that excites me. The challenge is when the writing is not good and you're trying to work with that. So for me, it all starts with the material, and then, just working my process and doing the research and the backstory and, what can I bring to this character? What can I bring this unexpected? Where can there be some surprises? The late great acting teacher of mine, Zena Jasper from New York, she would always say, Susan, always, be surprised by something. Don't know everything. And, find those moments, those nuances that you can create, even if they're not there, which is fun to do. It's like playing detective a little bit. But, in film, I guess, is you can take your time more and let things breathe more. Whereas television has, you have to consider the pacing of what you're auditioning for. And say if you're auditioning for, NCIS, then you want to go and research and watch that show if you're not familiar with it, or watch a lot of the trailers on IMDb and just see what the pacing is, see what the tone is, and try to blend in with that and, bring something to the table, basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you've talked about some of your projects in film festivals all over the country, including South by Southwest, but you've been recognized in numerous Florida-based film festivals. Talk about the experience of showing your films in your home state here in Florida.
It is just the most wonderful experience because I do and have traveled a lot ever since when my youngest went to college. I spent a lot of time in New York City and kept an apartment up there because the commute is so much easier than LA to Central Florida. So I had been gone and out of this market for a while because there hasn't been a lot of work in Florida in the last several years, which saddens me, and I hope that's changing. But to come back and to see your peers and people that you enjoyed learning with 30 years ago, Kathy Laughlin's class or Russ Blackwell's class or Ken and Valerie Grant, KVG, back, I'm really dating myself, but back in the day, you probably remember all of these people. But, to run into them at these film festivals, and they're so proud of what I've done and so supportive. And we've just the Florida community and just the whole Southern regional market, the Southeast, even in Dallas, there's just an energy and a supportive base where we love each other and we support one another and we encourage one another. So it's great to see those people.
Yeah.
After so many years and to see what they've done and to follow their careers. And a lot of us quit, a lot of us aren't in a position to, number one, afford it. And if we do afford it, we're selling real estate or, we're doing odd jobs or handyman or whatever it is to keep the lights on. So it just warms my heart. It warmed my heart to be at the film festival for A Taste of Love at the Sunscreen Film Festival and seeing Larry and Vivian and, Mandy Mills, who's well known over there, who's is called a young Susan Gallagher because she is such a hustler and, she works so hard. I think she works harder than I do, but she doesn't have kids or a husband yet. So she's able to do that. And I'm like, trying to support her and have produced with her before. So, yeah, it's great to be in Florida. It's a beautiful state to film in. It's a film-friendly state. We've got a great talent pool, wonderful crew here. So yeah, Florida is a wonderful market.
Excellent. Now, here's the obligatory question. What advice do you give to actors, writers, producers, anybody that that is under kind of where your umbrella is, looking to get involved in the industry, looking to kind of kickstart that? What's the advice you would give them?
Well, if you're an actor, I would say try to do student films and do, of course, community theater, where you can learn so much about the craft. But student films, because they're always looking for crew members, members, volunteer talent. And then if you have a little project of your own, then they'll reciprocate and they'll work on yours. And you learn from each other and you support one another and you start networking and you learn and meet people who are like-minded and trying to do the same thing you're doing. And that's how you slowly start building a network. And, I've tried very hard not to burn bridges in this industry and to be fairly transparent and honest. You're always occasionally going to have personality clashes just because that's the way life is. That's the way business is. But, you wish each other well and try not to burn any bridges. Try not to burn any bridges with casting directors or anybody on set. I mean, I can remember, I think I was, Lori Wyman is a good friend of mine, and I was at one of her workshops many, many years ago. And she said something about, when you're driving to your audition, don't be cutting people off, or when you pull in the parking lot, don't be rude to somebody and steal their parking spot. And then you go in and be rude to the receptionist in the casting office because they could be the casting director in a couple of years. And so be mindful to be professional in the business and to try to, be grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's a small world. It's a small industry. You never know who the one person you're going to kind of mouth off to where they're going to be in a year or two.
Absolutely. It is such a small world. And I really would stress that to anyone, especially new in the business, because people know each other and they see that you've worked with so-and-so and people want to work with people that are easy to work with.
Yeah.
They don't want to work with a diva. And we sometimes we have, our moments, but you have to be self-reflective and go, okay, I need to do this. I need to adjust that and tweak my attitude. And because you can get down in this business too, because there's so much rejection.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I've 25 years ago, I was the tape vault guy at my company. And I remember the 2 or 3 people that treated me like the tape vault guy instead of treating me like a human being. And yeah, that it sticks with you. So yeah, you're right. Those things stick in your memory.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Susan, where can people keep up on everything you're doing? Tell us what you got going on, where they can find you, anything like that.
Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Please follow me on Instagram, and I am Susan Gallagher. I'm usually most active on Instagram, but I also am active on Facebook, and it's an official page. I started out with Susan Gallagher just as a personal page, and then they max your friends at 5,000.
Yeah.
So the first episode that aired on Cobra Kai, I was maxed out. So I have Susan Gallagher official, which is unlimited. So that's the one that we need to, stay on. And I probably need to figure out a way to go inactive on Susan Gallagher personal because it takes up too much time. And then the fans a few years ago created Cobra Kai's Homeless Lynn page. So I'm like, and they run it, but I mean, I have to engage on there. And so, it's crazy. And I did have a Twitter, but I got a new phone. I broke down and bought a new iPhone, and now I can't find my Twitter. So I'm not the most technically savvy person in the world. And then somebody, Lisa Midden, you probably know her. She works with Mark Mullen all the time. Her kids started what TikTok page for Homeless Lynn. So, but I'm usually I am Susan Gallagher on Instagram or Susan Gallagher Official on Facebook. And I have a website too. So whatever, And I have a YouTube page. Oh my gosh, there's a YouTube page too. And there's a bunch of Homeless Lynn stuff on there. Susan Gallagher. Yeah.
Plenty of places to find you on social media. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, I appreciate you spending time with us today, sharing some great stories. Thanks for being on the Film Florida podcast, and thanks for being a member of Film Florida. We really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I've got a couple of things coming out. I've got a great couple of scenes with Pierce Brosnan in Fast Charlie, and wonderful lead role opposite Ray Levine Spielberg and Sawyer Spielberg, Stephen's son and daughter-in-law, called Mary Good Enough, which is coming out this Christmas, and a couple other things. So stay tuned.
Well, we will definitely be on the lookout for all of those. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org and like or follow our social media pages. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.24 for our 2024 fundraising campaign. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.